TWD, welcome to Together, and it's once again time for an episode with my friend Bill Mew.
It's a bit like the time when America was the first to have a nuclear bomb and enjoyed an advantage for a while before anyone else had it. The Americans are very, very keen to ensure that now that they have this nuclear device for mass surveillance, that they don't want anyone else to have it, let alone the Chinese, who they seen as the main threat. And therefore, most of the bluster is not about preventing mass surveillance, it is preventing anyone else from doing mass surveillance.
It's about the monopoly on mass surveillance. That's what they want to protect, and that's what they want to keep. Now,
so if we go to the next step on how to prevent this, the very obvious answer is encryption. But then again, there is another story to tell, because one of the leaders in the encryption market had for very many years been Crypto AG, which was a Swiss company, but obviously being a Swiss company and based in neutral Switzerland, it was able to sell encryption technology to about 150 different countries. And therefore, even those countries that were aware that the US were doing this sort of mass surveillance had the opportunity to use this type of encryption software to encrypt their communication. So that's fine, isn't it?
It's wonderful, Bill, and it goes even further, right? We had the famous random seed generator, which was undercover of the NSA, recommended by all kinds of United States organizations as the standard and the most trusted random seed generator. And the random seeds are critical in cryptography. And oh, by the way, it was manipulated by the NSA so they could predict the next number in the random seed. And it's not the whole picture of cryptography, but it's an important part of cryptography. And it makes cracking the code
you could go one step further, because if 150 or so countries are using encryption software from Crypto AG, it would be enormously useful to have some sort of control. And strangely enough, we've recently discovered that actually the secret owners of Crypto AG were none other than the CIA. So I think that answers that particular question.
Coincidence, Bill, coincidence.
Coincidence,
don't
entirely coincidental that they happen to invest in that particular company. A wise investment, I'm sure.
I'm convinced, and I think they even made a good profit on it, not just in encryption and in data. But the thing that happens is encryption is a risk if you want to have full and unrestricted access. Encryption becomes less of a risk when you are in the middle of the encryption engine. So you can either make it much easier, or you can even completely disable that encryption technology. Now that they are exposed, let's put it like that, the United States is moving again forward with attempting to get not only legislation, but also get support from what they call the coalition of the willing, to have legislation in place which would enforce once again all legal entities within the United States to provide backdoors to United States intelligence community. And there's one thing very, very interesting about that. Recently, an article was published that the NSA admitted that the backdoors that they have been abused by foreign intelligence agencies, but they are not able to comment on what backdoors that was. So they already have backdoors, and they confirm that the biggest risk with backdoors is somebody else might use them.
Yes, well, obviously we're here talking about the one potential James Bond villain here who has all of the surveillance capabilities and is known to be actively doing it, pointing fingers at other people who, and as we've shown, Huawei is a complete red herring here, because it simply wouldn't be able to be part of this kind of conspiracy logistically. And they're pointing fingers at Huawei and others, accusing them of having backdoors when the CIA and NSA have had backdoors into encryption in the past, have been discovered and lost those, and are now looking at enforcing backdoors into the most widely used technologies and platforms in the world, so that they can regain that capability.
There's an interesting part in what you say, Bill. They had that capability. They lost it, or at least we assume they lost it.
Well, they were discovered.
part of it was discovered, because that's one thing that I learned over 30 years as an analyst. You never have the full picture. There's always more. There's one thing that I always consider extremely interesting in these kind of fields. I spoke to a couple of my contacts at Vodafone, at British Telecom, at Telefonica, and they're all in the security field. And they say, excuse me, are you telling me that somebody somewhere would be able to just access my network? Excuse me, that's not going to happen. And if that would be possible, why is the United States bombarding us with subpoenas and requests for access if they could? Because we know they have the power. And why are they saying that Huawei can do that just like that?
Well, the American authorities simply wouldn't be going down the legal warrant route if they already had the sort of access in the back doors. And in terms of evidence of backdoors on equipment from the likes of Huawei, there has never been found to be any backdoors. There have been a few engineering flaws, but you get engineering flaws with all hardware and software, and got things like Microsoft Windows, which we're all using commonly across the world, is still getting patches every month. And this is commonplace. But
I have an alert on critical vulnerabilities, Bill, as a security analyst. So I have a running alert on critical vulnerabilities. I am not able, I would spend my entire working day, every working day, if I would want to read them all. Now, please do not try to tell me that all those critical vulnerabilities are the result of good engineering practices, right? Okay,
so we're talking about telecom operators who are confident in their security, and that are fairly confident because they've been participating in a lot of the analysis of Huawei, that equipment isn't vulnerable, being told that they can't use the equipment by a country that we know is spying, and ironically, and possibly more ironically than anything, almost the only example known of actual backdoors being installed in this type of equipment was when Cisco equipment, an American manufacturer, had its shipments intercepted by the NSA and had malware installed on this equipment before it was reboxed and sent on to China, Pakistan, and other countries. And therefore, it is the height of hypocrisy for the US to be pointing their finger. So I think if we are to go back to our original question around the next James Bond and who his potential adversary is, actually James Bond's next potential adversary is probably Felix Leiter, the guy from the CIA or the NSA, because they're the ones doing all the mass surveillance.
Exactly, Bill. And for the sake of transparency, I want to point out that it was not Cisco who installed the backdoors. No. Cisco refused to participate, and then
Cisco were outraged that it happened and were even more upset when it became public.
Exactly. And the same applies, we mentioned them as well, the same applies to Microsoft, who went to enormous extent and effort to avoid this unrestricted access. As a result of that, we ended up with the Cloud Act, which still gives the United States access, but at least there is a regulation. So Microsoft as well did whatever they can to prevent this from happening, right? There are other companies, I'm not going to mention name except for Facebook, who voluntarily collaborated with these programs even before they were legally forced to do so. And the main thing, as you mentioned, is there's one country worldwide who not only has the legislative power, the economical power, the technical power to do so, but is proven to actually do it. And that is the United States.
And I think that's as far as we can go on this episode. Maybe we can come on to talk about what you've mentioned, the Cloud Act there, and there are some other laws, FISA and a whole host of them that are ripe for a discussion on another episode.
Exactly, Bill. So thank you for your insights, Bill. I'm looking forward to our next conversation. I know we're going to have a lot, and I know we're going to shed some light on topics that not everybody wants us to discuss. And that's the part what makes it extra fun. Bill, thank you.
Absolutely. Looking forward to doing it again.